Jasmine Carter walked out of prison at 6 a.m. after serving 5 years for a crime she didn't commit. 5 years protecting the man she loved, the man who promised to wait for her. But when she showed up at his apartment that same day, a blonde woman answered the door and said 3 words that shattered everything: "Ryan's my husband." And that night, when Jasmine found him at his promotion party, drunk and celebrating, she heard him raise his glass and toast to something that would change both their lives forever. Before we begin, please subscribe and hit the like button. Jasmine Carter stood at the prison gates at 6 o'clock a.m. on a cold November morning, clutching a plastic bag containing everything she owned. 5 years. She had spent 5 years behind bars for a crime she didn't commit. 5 years for Ryan Mitchell, the man she had loved, the man she had protected, the man who had promised to wait for her. The air outside tasted different than she remembered, sharper, cleaner, free. Her mother was supposed to pick her up, but her old Honda wasn't in the parking lot. Jasmine pulled out the cheap phone the prison had given her for release and called. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. A text came through. "Baby, I'm so sorry. Car broke down. Can you take a bus? I'll reimburse you. Love you so much. So proud of you." Jasmine felt a familiar heaviness settle in her chest. Even on her release day, nothing was easy. But she was used to disappointment now. Prison had taught her that. She took the bus downtown, watching the city she once knew transform before her eyes. New buildings, new shops, new people living new lives while hers had been frozen in time. The woman sitting beside her scrolled through a phone with a rose gold case. Jasmine looked down at the cheap plastic brick in her own hand, another reminder of how far behind she'd fallen. When she finally arrived at her mother's small apartment in the Bronx, she was exhausted. But her mother's hug made it all bearable. "My baby's home," her mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. "My baby's finally home." They spent the afternoon catching up. Her mother had aged in ways that photographs couldn't capture. Gray hair she hadn't had before. Deeper lines around her eyes. Hands that trembled slightly when she poured tea. Working double shifts at the hospital to make ends meet and to put money on Jasmine's commissary account. Guilt gnawed at Jasmine's stomach like a living thing. "Mama, I need to find Ryan," Jasmine said that evening, her voice quiet but firm. "I need to see him. He hasn't answered any of my letters in 6 months." Her mother's face darkened. The tea mug stopped halfway to her lips. "Jasmine, I know what you're going to say. But he stood by me for the first 4 years. He visited. He wrote. He put money on my books. Maybe he's just been busy with work. Maybe." "Baby, please don't do this to yourself." But Jasmine had to know. She needed to see him. She had given him 5 years of her life, 5 years in a cage, 5 years of her youth, 5 years of her future. The least he could do was face her. Explain the silence. Explain why the visits stopped, why the letters died, why the promises turned to dust. She still had Ryan's last known address saved in her memory like a prayer she'd repeated every night. The apartment they had shared in Chelsea before everything fell apart. Before the fraud investigation. Before she had taken the blame to protect him, the building looked the same. Clean brick, black awning, doorman who didn't recognize her. She buzzed the apartment. No answer. She buzzed again. Finally, a woman's voice came through the intercom, young, slightly annoyed. "Yes. I'm looking for Ryan Mitchell. Does he still live here?" A pause. Jasmine could hear something in the background: music, laughter. "A party? Who's asking?" I'm an old friend." "Jasmine." Another long pause. Then, "Come up. 4th floor, apartment for C." The elevator ride felt eternal. Jasmine's heart pounded against her ribs like it was trying to escape her chest. Who was that woman? A roommate? A sister she didn't know about? Her reflection in the polished elevator doors looked like a stranger. Prison, pale skin, cheap clothes, hollow eyes. The apartment door opened before she could knock. A pretty blonde woman in her late 20s stood there, wearing yoga pants and a designer sweatshirt that probably cost more than Jasmine's entire release outfit. Behind her, Jasmine could see their apartment completely redecorated. Nothing looked the same. The walls were a different color. New furniture. Expensive art. Someone else's home. "You're Jasmine," the woman said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. Is Ryan here?" The woman bit her lip. She looked uncomfortable, guilty, like she knew something terrible and didn't want to be the one to say it. He's at work. But maybe you should come in. We need to talk. Jasmine followed her inside, her feet moving on autopilot. The woman introduced herself as Madison, Ryan's wife. The word hit Jasmine like a physical blow, like someone had reached into her chest and squeezed her heart until it stopped beating. The room tilted. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she was hearing. You're married. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. 3 years now, Madison said quietly, her eyes full of something that looked like pity. He told me about you. About what happened. I'm sorry you went to prison. 3 years. He had gotten married 3 years ago. That meant he'd stood at an altar, said vows, kissed this woman, started a life with her, all while Jasmine was locked in a cell. While she was serving time for his crime. While she was protecting him. Does he know I'm out? Jasmine managed to ask. Her hands were shaking. She clasped them together to hide it. Madison nodded. He got a notification last week. He's been stressed about it. Stressed. He was stressed that she was free. Not guilty. Not apologetic. Not even worried about her. Just stressed about how her release might affect him. Where is he? Jasmine, maybe it's better if where is he? The words came out sharp, hard. A demand, not a question. Madison sighed. There's a work party tonight. At the Harborview restaurant downtown. Some kind of promotion celebration. Harborview, the name slammed into Jasmine like a freight train. Harborview was where Ryan had proposed to her 7 years ago. Back when she thought their future was golden. Back when she thought he loved her. Back when she was naive enough to believe in forever. Jasmine left without another word. She didn't thank Madison. Didn't ask more questions. Didn't cry or scream or fall apart. She just walked out, down the elevator, through the lobby, onto the street. But something inside her had changed. She took the subway downtown. Still wearing the same clothes she'd left prison in that morning. She didn't care. She needed to see Ryan, needed to hear him explain why he had abandoned her. Why he had married someone else while she rotted in a cell for a crime he committed. And maybe, just maybe, she needed to make him pay. It had all seemed so logical at the time. Ryan was a financial advisor with a promising career. Jasmine worked as his assistant. When federal investigators discovered that someone had been embezzling from client accounts, Ryan had panicked. Jazz, baby, listen to me, he'd said, his blue eyes wide with fear. If they arrest me, my career is over. My license, my reputation, everything. But you're young. You have no record. You'll get a lighter sentence. Maybe probation. And I'll take care of you. I'll make sure you're okay. I'll wait for you. We'll get married when this is over. She had believed him. She had loved him. And she had been so naive. The assistant always had access to the accounts. It would be easy to make it look like Jasmine had acted alone. Ryan would testify that he'd trusted her, that he had no idea what she was doing, that he was a victim too. And that's exactly what happened. Jasmine got 8 years. She served 5 with good behavior. Now, standing outside Harborview restaurant, she felt that old naivety burning away like fog in sunlight. The restaurant was all glass walls and soft lighting, upscale, elegant, expensive. Through the windows, she could see the party on the second floor. Well-dressed people holding wine glasses, laughing, celebrating someone's success, Ryan's success. Built on her sacrifice, Jasmine walked through the front door. She was still wearing the clothes they'd given her at release that morning: cheap jeans, a worn jacket, sneakers that had seen better days. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who'd just gotten out of prison. The hostess at the podium looked up, her professional smile faltering. "I'm sorry, Mum, but this is a private." Jasmine didn't stop. She walked past the hostess, past the concerned looks, straight to the stairs. Behind her, she heard the woman calling out, but Jasmine was already climbing. The sounds of the party grew louder with each step: music, laughter, the clink of glasses, the hum of people having the time of their lives. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Her hands were sweating. She wiped them on her jeans and kept moving. Then she heard his voice. "No, seriously, listen," Ryan was saying, his voice carrying across the room. "I want to make a toast." Jasmine stopped at the top of the stairs, ducking behind a decorative pillar. She could see him now, really see him for the first time in over a year. Ryan Mitchell stood in the center of the room, wearing an expensive navy suit she'd never seen before. His hair was perfectly styled. His smile was wide and confident. His arm was draped around Madison's shoulders, and around them stood a crowd of colleagues in business attire, all holding glasses, all waiting for his words. He looked successful, happy, whole, like prison had never touched him, like Jasmine had never existed. 5 years ago, Ryan continued, his voice slightly slurred from alcohol, I went through the hardest time of my life. An investigation, accusations, the threat of losing everything I'd worked for. But I survived it. I came out stronger. And now, I'm standing here as the new vice president of acquisitions, with a beautiful wife and a future brighter than I ever imagined. People cheered. Glasses clinked. Someone called out, speech, speech. Ryan grinned that charming smile Jasmine knew so well. The one that had made her fall in love. The one that had convinced her to throw away her life. You want to know the secret to survival, he said, raising his glass higher. It's simple. Always have a plan B, and if necessary, make sure someone else takes the fall. Laughter erupted around the room. Nervous laughter. Uncomfortable laughter. They thought he was joking, making some kind of clever business metaphor. But Jasmine knew better. Her hand moved to her pocket. The cheap prison phone. She pulled it out, her fingers trembling, and started recording. Seriously though, Ryan continued, his voice growing louder, more confident. Madison tugged at his arm, whispering something urgent, but he shook her off. I want to thank my dumb ex who did my time. If it wasn't for her taking the blame, I wouldn't be standing here today. So here's to Jasmine Carter, the best scapegoat I could ask for. He raised his glass. Some people laughed uncomfortably. Others looked confused. Madison's face had gone pale. But Ryan wasn't finished. Come on, don't look at me like that, he said to the room, his smile faltering slightly. She was going to be nothing anyway. At least this way, she served a purpose. She saved my career. That's more than she would have accomplished on her own. Something broke inside Jasmine. Not her heart that had broken years ago. Piece by piece, with every unanswered letter, every missed visit, every broken promise. Not her spirit. Prison had already shattered that and forced her to rebuild it from scraps. What broke now was her fear, her shame, her willingness to stay silent. The rage that had been building since Madison opened that apartment door, since she heard the word wife, since she learned about the 3 years. The promotion, the life Ryan had stolen, crystallized into something sharp and clear. This ends now. Her phone was still recording. Every word, every confession, every casual cruelty spoken by a man too drunk and too confident to realize what he was admitting. Jasmine took a breath. She stepped out from behind the pillar. Hello, Ryan, she said. The room went silent. Jasmine had just stepped out from behind that pillar with evidence that could destroy the man who destroyed her. But here's what I want to know. If you were in her position, would you have recorded him? Or would you have confronted him right there without proof? Drop your answer in the comments, because what happens next will make you question everything. Every head turned toward her. It happened in slow motion, the wave of attention rippling through the crowd as people registered her presence. A woman they didn't know. A woman who clearly didn't belong. A woman standing in the doorway like a ghost returned from the dead. Ryan's face drained of color. All the confidence, all the smugness, all the drunken bravado gone in an instant. His wine glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the polished floor, red liquid spreading across the wood like blood. Jasmine, he whispered. Madison's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes went wide with horror, not surprise, but the horror of watching something inevitable unfold. She'd known this moment was coming. She just hadn't known it would be tonight. Around the room, phones came out. One by one, then all at once. People sensing drama. People knowing they were witnessing something they'd want to remember, to share, to prove they'd been there when it happened. Someone in the back whispered loud enough to carry. Is that the woman he was talking about? Jasmine walked toward Ryan slowly, deliberately, each step measured and purposeful. She kept her eyes locked on his face, watching him shrink with every footfall. The man who had once seemed so large, so powerful, so untouchable, he looked small now. Pathetic. Surprise, she said, her voice steady despite the rage burning through her veins. I'm out early. Good behavior. Ryan stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. He put his hands up like she was going to hit him. Jazz, I didn't. It was a joke. Jasmine's voice cut through the room like a blade. You just told a room full of people that I went to prison for your crime. You called me your scapegoat. You toasted to me being dumb enough to take the fall for you. I was drunk. I didn't mean, you meant every word. Jasmine pulled out her phone, the cheap prison-issue phone she'd gotten that morning. It looked ridiculous in this upscale restaurant, surrounded by people with designer clothes and expensive watches. But right now, it was the most powerful object in the room. She held it up. And lucky for me, I recorded it. Ryan's eyes went wide. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You can't what? Jasmine took another step forward. Ryan took another step back. Can't prove that you just confessed to fraud. Can't show that you let an innocent woman go to prison while you got promoted and married and lived your best life. She paused, letting the weight of it sink in. I can. And I will. Someone in the crowd gasped. A woman near the back whispered. Oh my God. Madison was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Her hand still pressed to her mouth. The district attorney is going to love this, Jasmine continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. My lawyer will love this. And the press. Oh, Ryan, they're going to eat you alive. Jasmine, please. Ryan's voice cracked. He reached out toward her, his hands shaking. We can work this out. I can pay you. I have money now. Whatever you want, what I want, Jasmine said quietly, and the room leaned in to hear her, is justice. She let the word hang in the air. What I want is 5 years of my life back. What I want is for you to feel even a fraction of what I felt every day in that cell, knowing I was innocent, while you were out here living your dreams on my back, while you were proposing to someone else, while you were getting promoted, while you were toasting to your success built on my sacrifice. Her voice didn't waver. Didn't break. She'd cried all her tears in prison. There were none left now. Only clarity. Only purpose. She turned away from Ryan and faced the room. Dozens of faces stared back at her, shocked, uncomfortable, fascinated. Dozens of phones still recording. Good. Let them record. Let them all see. Everyone here should know, Jasmine said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. That Ryan Mitchell is a fraud and a liar who let an innocent woman go to prison to protect his career. And now, finally, he's going to pay for it. She turned back to Ryan one last time. He was crying now, mascara from Madison's tears on his expensive suit, his face red and blotchy. He looked nothing like the man she'd loved, nothing like the man she'd protected. See you in court, Ryan, she said. Then she walked out. Head held high, back straight. Every step filled with power she hadn't felt in 5 years. Behind her, chaos erupted. Ryan calling her name, his voice desperate and broken. Madison demanding explanations. What does she mean? What crime? Her voice shrill with panic. Guests muttering and exclaiming, their phones capturing everything, already texting friends, already posting to social media. Jasmine didn't look back, didn't slow down. She walked through the restaurant, past the stunned hostess, out into the cold November night. The air tasted sharp and clean, free. She pulled out her phone and called her mother. Baby, how did it go? Jasmine smiled. For the first time in 5 years, she smiled with her whole heart. Mama, can you give me the number for that lawyer you mentioned? The one who does wrongful conviction cases. What happened? Are you okay? I'm better than okay, Jasmine said, looking up at the city lights, at the world that was finally opening up for her again. I got my confession. Ryan just destroyed himself. And I have it all on tape. The recording went viral within hours. Jasmine woke up the next morning in her mother's cramped Bronx apartment to her cheap phone buzzing incessantly. Text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Emails flooding an account she'd just created. Notifications she didn't understand because social media had evolved while she was locked away. But her mother understood. She sat at the kitchen table with her own phone, scrolling through screens with wide eyes. Baby, you need to see this. The video was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Someone at the party had uploaded their own recording and it had spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed across news sites. Financial executive confesses to letting assistant take the fall. VP toasts to woman who served his prison time. Shocking admission at promotion party. The comment sections were unanimous. Lock him up. He's a monster. Justice for Jasmine. How is he not arrested yet? Ryan's company released a statement by noon. We are investigating this matter and take these allegations extremely seriously. By 3 p.m. Another statement. Ryan Mitchell has been suspended pending the outcome of an internal review. Jasmine's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Media requests. Journalists wanting exclusive interviews. Strangers offering support, legal advice, money. It was overwhelming. She'd spent 5 years in silence, and now the whole world wanted to hear her voice. Her mother made the call that mattered. Sarah Chen, she said, handing Jasmine a business card. She handles wrongful conviction cases. She's the best. Sarah Chen's office was in Manhattan, small but professional, walls covered with framed news articles about cases she'd won. Sarah herself was in her 40s, Asian American, with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. She shook Jasmine's hand firmly. I've seen the recording, Sarah said, gesturing to a chair. Frankly, it's the most clear-cut confession I've encountered in 15 years of practice. They sat across from each other, and Jasmine played the audio on her phone. Sarah listened intently, taking notes. When Ryan's voice said, "My dumb ex who did my time," Sarah's mouth tightened into a thin line. "This is the smoking gun we needed," Sarah said when it finished. "He literally confessed in front of witnesses. With this, we can overturn your conviction, file a civil suit for damages, and the DA will almost certainly bring criminal charges against him. Almost certainly." Jasmine's stomach clenched. What if they don't? With this recording and public pressure. Sarah leaned forward. They will. But we need to build an airtight case. I need everything your prison records, the original case files, financial documents, character witnesses. Over the next 2 weeks, they built the evidence. Jasmine's prison records showed perfect behavior, no infractions, model prisoner. The original case files revealed holes in the prosecution's story that no one had questioned because Jasmine had pled guilty. Financial records proved Ryan had sole access to the accounts and the strongest motive. Former colleagues came forward, willing to testify. "We always thought something was off," one said. But Ryan was so convincing. The district attorney's office called. They wanted to meet. The recording had compelled them to reopen the investigation. But freedom was harder than Jasmine expected. She lived in her mother's cramped apartment, sleeping on a pull-out couch, surrounded by walls that felt too close after years in a cell. The structure of prison had been oppressive, but at least it was predictable. Now, every decision was hers to make, and that terrified her. Sarah connected her with a therapist who specialized in post-incarceration trauma. Dr. Martinez was patient and kind. But the sessions were brutal. "It's normal to feel angry," Dr. Martinez said during their third meeting. "You were wronged, profoundly." "I'm not just angry," Jasmine admitted. "I'm scared. What if they don't believe me? What if he wins again? He's won everything so far," he confessed, Jasmine. On tape, in front of witnesses, "He's rich now. Rich people don't go to prison." Dr. Martinez didn't argue with that. She couldn't. They both knew the system was broken. But Sarah remained confident. "He gave us everything we needed," she said during one of their meetings. "His own words will convict him. Trust the process." The news about Ryan came in waves. First, his suspension. Then Madison filing for divorce. Jasmine saw it on a gossip site. Madison's statement about being deceived and heartbroken. Ryan's lawyers reached out through official channels, wanting to discuss a potential settlement. "Don't engage," Sarah advised. "Let the legal process work." "They're scared, which means we're winning." The media attention intensified. Interview requests poured in morning shows, podcasts, documentary producers. Jasmine declined most of them. She wasn't ready to be a public face, to relive her trauma for entertainment, but she agreed to one interview with a local news station. Brief, controlled. Sarah sat just off camera. The reporter was sympathetic but direct. "How do you feel now that the truth is coming out?" Jasmine looked straight into the camera. "I spent 5 years paying for his crime. Now it's his turn to pay for his own actions." The clip went viral too. #JusticeForJasmine trended on Twitter. Support poured in from advocacy groups, celebrities, strangers who saw themselves in her story. 3 months passed in a blur of legal meetings, depositions, media coverage, and sleepless nights. The DA formally charged Ryan Mitchell with 15 counts of fraud and 1 count of obstruction of justice. Jasmine's conviction was overturned. She was officially exonerated, but Ryan's lawyers kept pushing for a settlement. The offers increased. $2 million, $3 million, $5 million. Sarah presented each one. It's your decision. This is life-changing money, Jasmine thought about it. $5 million could change everything. Pay off her mother's debts. Buy a house. Start over. Give her the life Ryan had stolen. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw him at that party, smiling, toasting, calling her dumb, laughing about how she'd served a purpose. No, she said. I want him in prison. Sarah smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. The settlement meeting was scheduled anyway. Ryan's lawyer's last desperate attempt. Tomorrow, Jasmine would face Ryan Mitchell across a conference table for the first time since that night at the restaurant. And this time, she would be the one in control. The law office was everything Jasmine's life had never been. Polished mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Ryan's lawyers had chosen the location deliberately. A show of power. A reminder of what money could buy. But Jasmine wasn't intimidated. Not anymore. She sat across from Ryan with Sarah Chen beside her, a stack of documents and the recording device placed strategically on the table between them. Ryan's team filled the other side, 3 lawyers in expensive suits, all looking confident, all looking like they'd done this 1,000 times before. And then there was Ryan. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loose on his frame. Gray threaded through his temples where there had been none before. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He wouldn't look at her, keeping his gaze fixed on the table, his hands clasped in front of him like a penitent sinner. The power dynamic had shifted completely. Jasmine could feel it in the air. She was no longer the naive assistant, the desperate woman willing to sacrifice everything for love. She was the woman with the evidence. The woman with the truth. The woman holding all the cards. Ryan's lead lawyer cleared his throat. Ms. Carter, thank you for agreeing to meet with us today. His voice was stiff, formal, perfectly professional. My client is prepared to offer a settlement. $5 million in exchange for your agreement not to pursue criminal charges and to sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. $5 million. The number hung in the air like something tangible. Something Jasmine could reach out and touch. $5 million was more money than she had ever imagined having. More money than her mother had earned in her entire life of double shifts and overtime hours. It was the kind of money that changed everything. She could pay off her mother's debts. All of them. The medical bills, the credit cards, the mortgage she'd been struggling with for decades. She could buy a house, a real house with a backyard and rooms that didn't echo with the sounds of neighbors through thin walls. She could start a business, go back to school, travel, live without ever worrying about money again. She could reclaim the life Ryan had stolen from her. Jasmine had grown up poor. Not just struggling poor. Government assistance poor. Utilities shut off poor. Choosing between groceries and rent poor. Her mother had worked herself to the bone, and they'd still barely scraped by. In prison, commissary money had always been tight. Ramen noodles and stamped envelopes, that's what her budget allowed. $5 million represented a kind of freedom she'd never known. Financial security, stability. He thought the temptation was real. Powerful. It would be so easy to say yes. Sarah leaned close, her voice low. The recording is enough to reopen the case. The DA is already investigating. Ryan is going to face charges whether you cooperate or not. She paused. But this is your decision. No one can make it for you. Across the table, Ryan looked up for the first time. Hope flickered in his eyes, desperate, pathetic hope. His lawyer sat back, confident. They'd done this before. Everyone had a price. Everyone could be bought. Ryan's career was already destroyed. Madison had finalized their divorce last week. Jasmine had seen it on the news. His reputation was in ruins. The viral recording had seen to that. But he could still avoid prison. Still buy his way out of consequences. Still win. Jasmine, please, Ryan started to say. She held up her hand. He stopped. The silence in the conference room stretched long and heavy. Jasmine could hear the clock on the wall ticking. Could hear someone's pen tapping against the table. Could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She thought about 5 years in a cell. 5 years of her life, frozen in time while the world moved on without her. 5 years of counting down days, missing her mother, grieving a future that was supposed to be hers. She thought about Ryan at that party, smiling his charming smile, toasting to his success. My dumb ex who did my time, the laughter, the casual cruelty. She was going to be nothing anyway. She thought about the women she'd met in prison, women who had no advocates, no recordings, no viral videos, no justice, women whose stories would never be heard because they didn't have proof, didn't have money, didn't have the luxury of choice. Jasmine looked directly at Ryan for the first time since entering the room. No, she said. Ryan's head snapped up. What? I don't want your money, Jasmine said, her voice quiet but firm as steel. I want you to go to prison. I want you to know what it feels like to be locked in a cage for something you actually did. I want your career destroyed the way mine was. I want your reputation ruined. I want you to lose everything, just like I did. Jasmine, please, you called me dumb. Her voice didn't rise. But everyone in the room leaned forward. You called me your scapegoat. You toasted to me being stupid enough to sacrifice myself for you. Well, guess what, Ryan? I'm not dumb anymore. And you're not going to buy your way out of this. She stood up. Sarah gathered the documents smoothly, standing beside her. See you at trial, Jasmine said. She walked out of the conference room, her head high, her steps steady. Ryan's lawyers erupted in urgent whispers behind her. One of them called out, Miss Carter. Perhaps we could increase the offer, but Jasmine didn't stop, didn't turn around, didn't hesitate. Behind her, she heard Ryan's lead lawyer say something urgent to his client, but she didn't care. She had made her choice, and for the first time in 5 years. It felt like the right one. $5 million. That's what Ryan offered Jasmine to stay silent. More money than she'd seen in her entire life, enough to change everything. But she walked away from it. Now I need to hear from you. Would you have taken the money and moved on, or would you have done what Jasmine did and demanded he face prison time? Comment below because this decision is about to lead to something nobody expected. 6 weeks of preparation felt like 6 years. Jasmine met with prosecutors almost daily. They were building a strong case, stronger than even Sarah had hoped. The forensic accountants had traced every fraudulent transaction directly to Ryan's personal accounts. Former colleagues came forward with testimony that Jasmine had never possessed the authority to make those kinds of financial decisions. The original case files revealed what everyone had missed: a rushed prosecution, weak evidence, and a naive young woman's confession extracted through manipulation and misplaced love. But preparation meant reliving it all: the manipulation, the false promises, Ryan's tears when he'd begged her to take the blame, her own foolish belief that love meant sacrifice. Therapy sessions intensified. Dr. Martinez helped her process the trauma so she could testify clearly without breaking down on the stand. You need to be strong, she said, but you also need to be honest about what he took from you. Outside the courthouse, a media circus grew daily. Cameras, reporters, people holding signs reading "Justice for Jasmine" and "Lock him up." Public interest had reached a fever pitch. The story had everything: betrayal, romance, corruption, a woman fighting back. Jasmine's support system surrounded her. Her mother, who took time off work she couldn't afford. Sarah, who worked 16-hour days preparing. New friends from the wrongful conviction advocacy group who understood what she'd survived in ways no one else could. The trial began on a cold January morning. The prosecution's opening statement painted Ryan as a calculating manipulator who'd used his girlfriend's love and naivety to escape consequences. They presented forensic evidence showing all fraudulent transactions originated from Ryan's access points. Character witnesses testified that Jasmine, as an assistant, simply didn't have the clearance to execute those kinds of transfers. Then they played the recording. The courtroom went silent. Ryan's drunken voice filled the space. My dumb ex who did my time. The best scapegoat I could ask for. She was going to be nothing anyway. The jury's faces shifted from neutral to disgusted. One woman shook her head. A man in the back row leaned forward. Frowning. Expert testimony confirmed the recording's authenticity. Voice analysis, metadata, witnesses from the party who confirmed they'd been there, they'd heard it. It had happened exactly as recorded. Ryan's defense team was expensive and aggressive. Their strategy was predictable. He was drunk. It was a joke in poor taste. Jasmine was a bitter ex-girlfriend trying to frame him. They called her a convicted felon trying to shift blame years later. They suggested she'd recorded him illegally, manufacturing evidence to destroy him. Ms. Carter confessed to these crimes. The defense attorney said in his opening statement, "She pled guilty. She served her time. Now, she wants revenge because Mr. Mitchell moved on with his life." But the evidence told a different story. When Jasmine took the stand, her hands were shaking. This was the hardest moment of her life, harder than the arrest, harder than the sentencing, harder than the first night in prison. The prosecutor was gentle. "Ms. Carter, can you tell us about your relationship with Ryan Mitchell?" Jasmine spoke clearly. She recounted their relationship, how she'd loved him, trusted him completely. How when the investigation started, Ryan had panicked. How he'd cried and begged her to protect him. "He said I was young, that I had no record, that I'd get probation," she testified. "He promised to wait for me. He promised we'd get married when it was over. He promised to take care of me." Her voice cracked slightly. "I believed him." She described prison. 5 years of her life, frozen. Holidays missed. Her mother aging alone. Letters she wrote that went unanswered. The slow, crushing realization that Ryan had abandoned her. "When I got out, I found out he'd married someone else. He'd been promoted. He was thriving." Jasmine looked directly at the jury. "He didn't just steal 5 years of my life. He stole my belief in goodness, in love, in justice. Until that recording. I thought he would get away with it forever." The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal. "You confessed to the crime, didn't you, Ms. Carter?" "I confessed to protect the man I loved," Jasmine said steadily. "A man who promised to wait for me, a man who lied. Isn't it true you're just angry he moved on?" "I'm angry he let me go to prison for his crime. His personal life is irrelevant. The facts are clear. She didn't break, didn't cry. Sarah had prepared her well. The jury deliberated for 2 days, 2 days of unbearable tension. Jasmine couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. What if they believed Ryan's defense? What if his expensive lawyers had planted enough doubt? "The evidence is overwhelming," Sarah kept saying. "Trust the process." On the afternoon of the second day, the jury returned. "We find the defendant, Ryan Mitchell, guilty on all counts. 15 counts of fraud, 1 count of obstruction of justice." Ryan's face crumbled. His head dropped into his hands. Madison, sitting in the gallery, began to cry. Jasmine's mother squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. Jasmine felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just a quiet, simple relief. At sentencing, the judge was unsparing. "Mr. Mitchell, you not only committed fraud, but you manipulated an innocent woman into taking responsibility for your crimes. Your actions destroyed Ms. Carter's life for 5 years. You showed no remorse until you were caught." The sentence, 12 years in federal prison, more time than Jasmine had served. The poetic justice wasn't lost on anyone. They led Ryan away in handcuffs. He looked at Jasmine one last time, his eyes filled with hatred and disbelief, like he still couldn't comprehend how he'd lost. She looked back, her face calm. Outside, the media frenzy was deafening. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Jasmine stopped on the courthouse steps, Sarah and her mother beside her. "Today, the truth won," she said simply. "That's all I ever wanted." As she walked down the courthouse steps with her mother and Sarah, Jasmine realized something. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into that prison 5 years ago. She was stronger, and she was finally, truly free. The aftermath came in waves: legal, financial, emotional. Jasmine's conviction was officially overturned. The state offered a settlement, $2 million for wrongful imprisonment, not as much as Ryan had offered, but this money meant something different. It was earned through justice, not bought with silence. The first thing Jasmine did was pay off her mother's debts, every single one: medical bills, credit cards, the mortgage that had hung over their heads for decades. Her mother cried when Jasmine handed her the bank statement. "Baby, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did. You worked double shifts to put money on my commissary. Now you're going to retire." And she did. For the first time in 40 years. Jasmine's mother stopped working herself to exhaustion. Jasmine found a small apartment in Brooklyn. Not fancy, just one bedroom with a balcony overlooking the neighborhood, but it was hers. Chosen by her. Paid for by her. The first place that had ever truly belonged to her. She furnished it slowly, deliberately, each piece a statement. "This is my home, my life, my choice." Therapy continued. Dr. Martinez helped her process the trauma, rebuild an identity that wasn't defined by what had been done to her. "You're not just a survivor," Dr. Martinez said. "You're a whole person. Remember that." 6 months after the trial, a publisher approached her. "Your story needs to be told." The book was harder to write than Jasmine expected. She worked with a ghostwriter initially, but slowly found her own voice, raw, honest, unflinching. She called it Scapegoat: How I Survived 5 Years for Someone Else's Crime. It became a bestseller. The advance and royalties provided more financial security than she'd ever known. But more than the money, the book gave her validation, purpose, a voice that reached beyond her own pain. Letters arrived daily. From wrongly convicted people. From families fighting for justice. From strangers who saw themselves in her story. "You give us hope," they wrote. "If you can survive this, maybe we can too." Jasmine enrolled in a criminal justice degree program, online classes with flexible schedules. Her professors were fascinated by her firsthand experience. She excelled academically, bringing lived knowledge that textbooks couldn't teach. "I have something most students don't," she told one professor. "I understand exactly how the system fails people." She specialized in wrongful convictions and coerced confessions. The very things that had destroyed her life became her expertise. A wrongful conviction advocacy nonprofit hired her. She used her story to help others: legal support, emotional support, systemic change advocacy. The work was exhausting but meaningful in ways she'd never imagined. That's where she met Marcus, a young man whose sister was in prison for her boyfriend's crime. The story was devastatingly familiar. "I know exactly what she's going through," Jasmine told him. "And I know how to fight it." She helped Marcus's legal team, offering her case as precedent. The system that had failed her might save someone else. 2 years after Ryan's conviction, Jasmine was invited to speak at a prison reform conference. Hundreds of attendees: activists, lawyers, formerly incarcerated people. She stood on that stage in a borrowed blazer, no longer the broken woman who'd clutched a plastic bag at the prison gates. "I spent 5 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit," she told the audience. "But I refuse to spend the rest of my life as a prisoner to that experience. I could have let bitterness consume me. I could have let Ryan's betrayal define who I am. But instead, I chose to fight. I chose to speak up. I chose to reclaim my life." The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, Marcus found her, tears streaming down his face. "They're reviewing my sister's case. Because of the precedent you set. Because of you." "Did it feel good?" he asked. "When they convicted him? When you won?" Jasmine thought carefully. "You know what felt good? Walking out of that courtroom knowing I didn't have to think about him anymore. Knowing I had taken my power back. That's what victory really is, not revenge, but freedom." Now, sitting on her balcony in Brooklyn, Jasmine looked out at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with messages: her mother asking about dinner plans, Sarah sharing news about another case they'd won, Marcus sending updates about his sister's progress. She pulled out her journal, the habit she'd started in prison and never stopped. "Today I realized I don't hate Ryan anymore. I don't think about him at all except when I have to. He took 5 years from me, but I won't let him take one more second. I've taken my life back. And that's the greatest victory of all." 5 years after Ryan's conviction, a letter arrived, forwarded through Sarah, who'd asked if Jasmine wanted to see it. The handwriting was Ryan's. The letter was long, rambling, clearly written over many drafts. He apologized. He took responsibility. He said prison had changed him, made him see what a monster he'd been. "I understand if you never forgive me, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry." Jasmine read it once. Then she folded it and put it in a drawer. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Forgiveness wasn't about him. It was about her. And she had already forgiven herself for being young and naive and trusting the wrong person. That was all the forgiveness that mattered. Her phone rang. Marcus, breathless with joy. She's out. My sister's conviction was overturned. Jasmine cried tears of joy this time. See, the truth does come out. Come to her welcome home party. Please, you're the reason this happened. The cycle of hope and healing continued. Jasmine helping someone else the way she'd wished someone had helped her. She thought about the woman at the prison gates years ago clutching a plastic bag, betrayed, broken, naive. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, unbreakable. Somewhere, Ryan was in a prison cell, serving his time. But Jasmine didn't need to think about that. She had no revenge to savor, no vindication to crave. She was simply living her life freely, fully on her own terms. Tomorrow, she would teach her first class at the community college, Understanding Wrongful Convictions. 20 students enrolled. 20 people who wanted to learn how to fix a broken system. This was her purpose. This was her freedom. This was her victory. Her phone buzzed with a text from a new friend inviting her to dinner. Jasmine smiled. Yes, sounds perfect. She closed her journal and stood up, ready for whatever came next. Because that was the thing about surviving hell. Once you made it through, you realized you could survive anything. And more than that, you could help others survive too. That was the greatest freedom of all. 5 years after Ryan went to prison, he wrote Jasmine a letter apologizing for everything. She read it once and never responded. Some people say forgiveness is for yourself, not the person who hurt you. Others say some things are unforgivable. What do you think? Did Jasmine owe Ryan a response, or was her silence the perfect ending? And here's the real question. Is helping others the ultimate form of healing, or should she have focused only on herself? Let me know in the comments what you would have done. Thank you for listening. Until next time.